All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. Today, I'm honored to have Jillian Tedesco with us, and she is the founder and CEO of Fit Flavors. And there are two things that really stick out when you hear Jillian's story, and you're going to enjoy it today. One is it doesn't matter how, she's just going to figure that out. And then two is I think we'll spend some time on her relationship with her faith and how that has really transformed and has become a very important piece to her overall story. So Jillian, thanks so much for being on today.
Awesome. I'm ready to go.
I love it. So growing up, you were into athletics, specifically softball. Talk a little bit about some of the life lessons that a person's able to learn while playing athletics.
Man, I just think there's so much value in playing on a team, because I've been on many different teams where I was the best player and then I was not the best player. Not that I was bad, but the team, we were so good. And I was the youngest girl on the team. So I felt like I had to work extra hard just to get the respect of the older girls. I played varsity my freshman year. That was another example of just having to do all the extra work, run the fastest, have the best attitude, all those kind of things. But I specifically remember something growing up. Actually, my dad, I realize this stuff now. Like when I was a kid, this never registered to me. But when I was a kid, my dad used to take me to a field, and we do practice on our own after practice or on the weekends. And he used to have this 5-gallon Home Depot bucket full of golf balls, and he would pitch them to me and he would hit them at me. And he's like, if you catch a golf ball, you can catch a softball. And he'd be like, okay, get down on your knees and I'm going to hit these balls at you. Okay, put your hand behind your back and just use your bare hand. And I mean, my dad would hit golf balls at me with a metal bat, and he got me a mouth guard, and he's like, we'll just get you a mouth guard in case it hits you in the mouth, it won't knock your teeth out. And I played third base and shortstop. So I could ground balls, and he'd also pitch them to me because I was typically the number one or number two batter. I was never a big power hitter, but I could switch hit, slap bunt, drag bunt, any kind of bunt, get on base. That was my deal. And I was just practice with golf balls. So the softballs were these big, huge neon yellow watermelons coming in at me. But, just putting in the work outside of the work that's expected of you is something instilling at me in such a young age. And I realized then I was alone. There wasn't other girls out there practicing with me. But what I was doing was I was establishing this confidence within myself, because I knew I had the skills. Right. I was actually so skillful in high school. My high school team, I just felt like an oddball because I was so much better than a lot of the older girls. So that's why I played on the select teams where I was the youngest, and I had these girls were the best girls from all over the high school. So that was the fun team that I was on. But those habits and lessons that I learned with playing softball, I believe I took and I still implement today, is you do a lot of extra work when nobody's looking. That's what really is going to get you ahead and give you the confidence that you need to believe in yourself.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Might have Child Protective Services called today, but other than that, it definitely does teach us a lot of good lessons. And yeah, to your point, it probably started, segmenting or giving you that idea that yes, this is a way that you do life. It's not just for the athletic event.
Totally.
So you end up senior year. It's kind of a big year, you're with all your friends and people, and you guys end up moving, and that transitions you from a decent sized high school to a really large high school. And that starts changing a little bit about what you're into athletically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did play, volleyball and basketball as well. And when I got to the big school, it was a lot more competitive. I remember playing basketball and basically not playing as a senior, and there were sophomores that were bigger and taller than me who would start. And I mean, rightfully so, they were so good. And I just remember thinking holy cow, I am a small fish in a really big sea right now. And I just honed in on softball and focused on that. And that's where, I was really good. I actually got a scholarship my senior year, but I was done with softball. I kind of got in a slump my senior year, and I had played so much competitive ball for so long. I was kind of curious what it would be like to get out in the workforce and
Yeah.
not play college. And that's kind of what deterred me from accepting the scholarship.
Absolutely. And so instead of accepting the scholarship, which I'm sure that's a tough decision to make, you
It
get
was.
your certified trainer.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'm gonna start working out over the summer. I went to the YMCA up the street, and I remember picking up the dumbbells and doing my first set of walking lunges, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I think I'm a personal trainer. Like, this is what I want to do. And it was literally a decision I made like right away, and I signed up to get certified at, I believe, the end of the summer, and by September, my freshman year in college, I was already a certified personal trainer. So
Wow.
I started working at the rec center at college. And then I got a job just like at like a mom and pop family owned gym in town, just working the front desk. I wasn't training there
Okay.
because I was 19. The guy was like, you got to work the front desk. You're not old enough to train yet. So he was probably smart. He was like, not yet.
Well, you may be the only person to ever say that. I did walking lunges and fell in love. I typically not super enthusiastic about seeing that on my workout, but hey, I'm glad you were.
Uh-huh.
So as you're working there, you get an opportunity to move down to Miami.
Yep.
And is that where you first get the opportunity to do training?
Well, I was training a little bit at the rec center,
Okay.
and I was leading classes and doing very little one-on-one. But yes, the mom and pop gym I was working at, the owner also had a gym in Miami, and I don't know why he had came up, tried to launch something in where I was at was Murfreesboro, Tennessee at the time. And since I moved there my senior year, I did not like the South. I came from Ohio, and the first opportunity I got to get out of there, I took it. So I dropped out of college and I moved to Miami, Florida. And he's like, if you can help run the gym for me, you can train anyone there. You can just run your own personal training business. And that's exactly what I did. So I moved down there at 19 and I started training.
So let's talk about this because that's a pretty big decision at a relatively young age. And I'm sure not everyone involved was on the same line. So talk a little bit about, was there anyone in your circle that was like, Jillian, what are we doing right now? Like, just, stay the course. And how did you listen to what they were telling you? And at the same time, move forward and make your own choice?
It's unfortunate. Like being there, I didn't have a ton of really good friends because
Hmm.
I had only went 1 year of high school, and I had, I guess you could call it surface friends, like friends
Yeah.
that I had just become friends with, but they weren't like deep rooted friendships. And my mom and dad weren't going to stop me from doing whatever I wanted to do, but I I was just ready to get out and try something new. So I just took a leap of faith and I went down there. The guy who I was working for was very like positive, and he wanted me to go down there, and he knew I was a good worker. So he's just
Yeah.
like, go do your thing. And that's exactly what I did. I don't even regret dropping out of school because I knew if I wanted to be a personal trainer, I was like, I don't have to get a degree in training. I'm already certified.
Right.
So I took it upon myself to get 2 more additional certifications just to well round out my business. So I got certified through nutrition and then also as an exercise therapist, which is specializing in like post surgery or
Okay.
therapy. I
Yeah.
I could then train them as a personal trainer and understand what they had gone through.
And I'm sure that gives a big confidence boost, right?
Yeah, just education is
Yeah.
huge. When you take ownership of your education and you learn, again, that's just clarifying your why and giving you more confidence in what you need to do because you're educated.
Absolutely. Now, you weren't just like training, you had really engulfed yourself in the whole aspect that is training, right? The strict regimen of eating, the
Yeah.
strict regimen of working out, and things like that. So, talk about that because that's a relatively short time to just fully submerge yourself in that.
Yeah. And I guess, I mean, God, I don't think of myself as like an all or nothing kind of person. I actually don't, but at that time I really did. I was like, look, I want to be successful. I don't want to fall on my face at 19. I know mom and dad are not here to save me if I need them.
Yeah.
So I went all in, and like a part of wanting to become a trainer was I really wanted to become healthy and get myself as physically fit as I could. And at the time. So here's the kicker. I was dating a bodybuilder, and that's really was kind of like the leading factor that really kind of confused me in the beginning, was because I thought contest prep dieting was health.
Yeah.
And I was just a little misled. And at that time, I was learning about nutrition, but I hadn't had a full understanding, nor did I have any experience then.
Yeah.
So I was easily taking on the habits that he was living and thinking that was normal, and that's how I was going to become fit. But what it was doing over time, over 1 to 2 years, was really affecting my mindset and my relationship with food and nutrition as a whole. And it took me a while to figure that out, until I realized, like, I'm not happy eating like this.
Yeah, it can be very strict, right?
Very strict, very strict. I think I gave up drinking when I was 19. Like, I was like, oh, I'm never drinking again. I just cut out alcohol and got very, very diligent with my workouts, my regimen, everything was to the T.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as you're in Miami, you're gaining a lot of experience, and then the opportunity to come, I guess, back towards the Midwest into St. Louis happens. So talk a little bit about that transition and moving again, because once again, you've moved, 4 different times in 2 years at this point.
It was a lot of moving. It really was a lot of moving. And at that point, I really wasn't scared. I actually almost went to Las Vegas. I was just like, I'm not going back to Murfreesboro. And I had really no reason to go back to Ohio.
Yeah.
And my boyfriend at the time was like, I have friends in St. Louis. I was like, great, let's go there. That sounds good. I literally was just like that, packed up our car and we moved. The reason we left Miami was because the guy who had been running the gym finally got down there. He's like, you guys don't need to run this anymore. If you want to stay here, you're more than welcome to. We were kind of on the outs anyways on our relationship. And I don't know if it was like one step to try to keep the relationship going. We made a move like it was going to create a new positive start or something. But we moved up here, and I quickly got rooted into the fitness industry, working at gyms up here. And him and I actually split up about a year later.
Absolutely. So as you're working at a gym up here in St. Louis, you start realizing that maybe I wouldn't run the gym the same way. And yeah, and when you have that catalyst of a moment of running a gym and you wouldn't necessarily run it the same way, you can either continue to do that and just be a little bit frustrated, or you can decide, well, maybe I'll do my own thing.
Yeah. So I was working at a studio that I had pretty much launched a lifestyle weight loss program, where I was managing people's nutrition. I was doing nutritional coaching with them, per se, kind of explaining to them how nutrition worked in the body, like giving them some science. And then it's like helping them like create grocery lists and recipes. And this is where my love for food started to really blossom. I realized, oh my gosh, food is really what changes someone's physique more so than fitness. Fitness is great. It tones you up. But like, if you're wanting to lose lbs, sustain like a healthy lifestyle, you can really manage that with your nutrition. So I got more and more involved with nutrition. I spent a lot of time researching and reading, and just a lot of trial error on myself. That's when I started to realize, I really need to change my nutrition, because I'm eliminating a lot of really good things. And I was at the time hooked on a lot of artificial sweeteners, because I wasn't eating a lot of carbohydrates. I was doing the carb thing. So I would excessively eat sugar-free this, sugar-free that, Red Bull, Jello. I'd shoot a pack of gum a day. I mean, it was not what you would think healthy is. But at the time I was like, oh, I'm eating less calories. But as I read more science, I realized, oh my God, I have got to change what I'm doing. But at the time I was program, and the business wasn't really ran as ethical as it should be, let's just say. And me and another guy there were like, hey, let's do our own thing. So we opened our own personal training studio. I was 22 when we opened, and that was my first stab at business.
Well, why not? You're 22. There's a low risk environment, right?
I was very confident. I had ran this weight loss program for a couple of years. I was very successful. I had already moved around. I ran that gym in Miami. I was not scared to take a chance at it. I just didn't know anything about business, nor did I know the person very well that I went into business with, which was pretty stupid. I mean, it was flat out dumb that I did that. But
in hindsight, yes.
You live and you learn. And I actually stayed there for 3 years, and then him and I just had a really bad falling out. I had a falling out with my partner, and
Mhm.
on my 25th birthday is when I walked out of my business.
Yes. So there's obviously a lot of story we could go into on that, but I think that being said, that is a moment where all of a sudden a faith life could start for you.
Mhm.
And you talked about, there are a lot of just random moments that start adding up after you're willing to be at the lowest point and you make a prayer and you say, hey, if you're real, help me out. So talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that and just some of the
Yeah.
random events that then transition from there.
Okay. So basically, after I lost the business, I really felt like a failure. It was a
Yeah.
big ego check for me. I had been doing so well at such a young age. And I think I hid behind this facade that I had a business and I was really happy and successful, but
Mhm.
I really wasn't monetizing it. It wasn't like I was making money when I had my own place. We had just not figured it out. So I did it for several years and I did not make money. And when I had left, there was that weighing on me. And then also the fact that I didn't have it anymore and I had just walked away from it. It was a toxic environment. Him and I did not have a good relationship.
Yeah.
And it just everything felt, I had so much resentment towards him, a lot of guilt, and then the failure, and then just the ego crush. So
Mm.
I started to have anxiety, and I never had anxiety before in my life. And if you or anybody has ever felt anxiety, it is an awful feeling. It's a real thing. And it started to attack me every night when I would go to sleep. Like I would try to lay down and go to bed and I couldn't get up. I couldn't sleep because my heart would be racing. I'd feel like something was sitting on my chest and I couldn't breathe. And today I realized I was just worrying and I had so
Yeah.
much fear around. Jillian, what are you doing with your life? You're nothing. You are adding no value to society. You're so confident, but yet you have nothing for it. And like those voices were in my head. And I worried one night so bad I had a panic attack. Legit called the hospital, thought I was having a heart attack, and ended up in the hospital. And that's where I said that prayer to God. I mean, I was just, I think it was about two months after I had left my business.
Okay.
And I said, God, if you're real, help me. If you're real, show me. Like
Yeah.
this isn't me, and I don't know what to do. And after that is where everything started to unfold for me. And it was the most pivotal point in my life up until then. So I was 25 at the time, and God revealed Himself to me 3 times, very, very clearly
Yep.
in one week, through an event, through a person, and then through me studying the Bible and through prayer. So He'd answered a prayer. He told me that He was listening, and then the most impactful one was a woman who I didn't know who had came up to me at the gym. I actually started working at another small gym on the side, just 30 hours a week or whatever. So I didn't know her. She was a member there, and she did come up to me and said she goes, I don't know if you know me. And I said, no, I don't know you. And she said, you've been on my heart lately. And I'm like, who are you? And what the heck are you talking about? And I'll never forget, she looked ghost white. She was very nervous telling me this information. She was very scared. And I just remember sitting there thinking, like, who are you? And then she said, I've been praying for you, and God wanted me to tell you that everything is going to be okay. And that was it. And then I didn't see her again. And um, that experience really kind of shook me, and making sense of it now, I realize, God uses people for certain things. And for whatever reason, maybe she was supposed to give me that message. And I believe that when I was seeking God, I spent a lot of time in prayer. I'm talking like sometimes 2, 3, 4 hours a day, if my day would allow it, during that time after
Yeah.
I lost my business, just trying to figure out, get myself grounded in something. And I was creating a faith and finding out who God was and what He wanted from my life. And that was an amazing time. Like that, it
Yeah.
was a very quiet time where I started to learn about peace. And so what He did was He started to take the anxiety off of me and
Mhm.
started to fill me back up with peace and joy and hope. And what was presented to me through this practice of quiet time and prayer was, I felt God gave me the nudge and said, Jillian, you know what your passion is. It's nutrition. It's
Yeah.
food. Like, go do it. And I felt like God gave me permission to start something different. And
Yeah.
I thought, why not? And I decided I was going to go back to school and I was going to go to culinary school because I just always wanted to do it, but I never could because I was always so busy working.
Yeah.
And I was working part-time. I was working 30 hours a week. And I was young and single. I didn't have any family or any big responsibilities. So I was like, I'm going to go back to school. And at the same time, I started just meal prepping a few meals for some clients, just cooking meals for them to help them eat better. And that's literally how it started.
So there's a couple things, and then we'll jump back to that I want to just ask you about first. And once again, not everyone that listens is a believer or has a strong faith life, but I think it's important to at least talk about. And I'm just am curious for you. So for you, as you're going through this, kind of exploration of, what is my relationship, right? Opposed to just maybe, I call it kind of a religion, right? A relationship versus a religion. How do you discern between, all right, is this what Jillian wants, or is this what God's telling me I should be, entering into? How do you discern between that then and even now today?
Mhm. So, God's gift to us is the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And when you're connected to the Spirit, I always, like, my mom always just says, that you know that you know that you know, like, you just know. And I believe God met me, and I in that week that I had him, and I experienced that. And then everything I had read and studied um, told me that's what it was. And sometimes I call it like a nudge.
Yeah.
Like, if you get this feeling and you are urged to do something, but you're like, why? That's the Spirit. And I think, as you pray, you stay in connection with the Spirit, and the Spirit is good, and it bears good fruit. So if you've ever heard of the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, forgiveness, goodness, all those things, anything that you're feeling that's going to create good. And God wants you to succeed. God wants you to put good in the world. He wants to bless you. And all he wants you to do is be available. So I
Yeah.
believe I was making myself available. Did I think I had the best ability? Maybe not, probably not. I'm not the smartest. I'm not the best cook. There's so many things I'm not the best at, but I'm available. And I
Mhm.
believe God will use people who are willing. And if you're willing to do the work, God is going to create, what do I want to say? Like, he's going to create a path for you. And
Yeah.
he's created a path for me. And if I look back and think of like how far I've came, it's crazy to think the business that I have today. And there's no way I would accept that I did this by any means. I mean, it's me and a team of people and just the grace of God creating this path for us. And I think when you're connected to the Spirit and you stay in tune with the Spirit, he will guide you in where you're supposed to go. And he's also taught me some very valuable lessons. So many times we want to go out on our own and make our own decisions, which is fine. But when you do things without uh, God leading the way, you can start to go your own way and can get away from where God wants to lead you. And then a lot of times that's where I've gone and caught myself in a mistake or up shit's creek. And then I realized that I got away from God's direction. And it has been very prevalent in my business when I have steered in the wrong direction, that it was without his guidance.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Absolutely. Well, I think so. Someone that you and I both know, Vaughn, he probably said it best because we were talking about, well, how do you know if you're supposed to do it? And he goes, well, if you have good intentions, it's gonna help people, and it's not going against what the Bible or God would say. It's probably just good to like check it out. But if it's any of those three, then it's probably not the right thing for you to go check out. And you're like, that's wise.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, good. Okay. So fast forwarding back to where you had kind of ended off at, you had started. So there's a moment at like a cookout that somebody asks you, hey, your food's really good. Would you mind cooking for me? And it happened to be a friend. Like,
Yeah.
what a moment, right? What a moment.
Yeah.
And who knew what that was going to transcend into, but you realize I really enjoy this.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was really, I think it was Labor Day 2009. I had a party and I
Yeah.
had a friend who was like, Jillian, your food is so good, like amazing. I would pay for this. Like, I need this in my life. Like, why don't you cook me food? I will pay you to meal prep for me. And I'm like, okay, I would love to do that. Like I love to cook and I can manage your nutrition easily. And then someone else at the party was like, you can do me too, just add me in there. And so I had two people right then and there, went to work on Monday, asked two of my clients who had always said, oh my God, I wish you would cook for me. I said, I'm going to start cooking. They jumped on board. I had four people I was cooking for the first week. And so I had like 30 Tupperware. And I just, did it that way, tried to get the Tupperware back. And it wasn't very long before I had, 8, 10, 12, 15 people I was cooking for and decided to source containers. So, and that's really how it started. And then deciding I was going to go to school happened literally just a couple of weeks after that.
Wow. So you're juggling a lot at this point. How are we keeping up on everything and then still having a life for a partner at that moment?
Oh my God, I feel like that was nothing. I didn't even have kids then. I didn't even have a business then. Like I have way more on my plate now than I ever did then.
Yeah.
But at the time my husband was traveling a lot for work. So I think it made it a little easier because he was gone a lot. He would be gone sometimes Monday through Thursday. So I would have the whole week. I would train during the day. I took night school. So I was at school at night. And then the weekends were, plan, shop, cook, package, deliver. And then Jason would typically drive around in the car with me on Sundays because I made deliveries. It took me all day.
Yeah.
And that was our quality time. He would just hang out in the car with me. And we did that for about a year or so until he started packaging for me on Saturdays.
Yeah. I was gonna say you end up getting an employee a little bit into the way because you need some help.
He calls himself zero. What's he call himself? Like 001. He's like, I was the first of the first.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you start gaining a lot of traction though, right? So, it's not just 4 people, it's 30 people, it's 60 people. And yeah, your house turns into really a bedroom with a business in it, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So Jason had this is a house we live in. Actually, my office I'm sitting in right now, it's got this beautiful furniture. I laugh because this used to be my storage room. Like on this back wall, there used to be huge racks and there'd be pots and pans and cases of oatmeal and containers and just 10 cans full of like tomato sauce and stuff and beans, dried beans. But yeah, so I grew it out of here till I had about 9 refrigerators in my house. I had one in my garage, one in my kitchen, and 7 in this room I'm sitting in. They like went around the room. This is a pretty big size room. And I had in the middle, like a big table that was just like a piece of plywood from like Home Depot. I think it was like 4 by 10. And we had it onto like horses and we would package the food on here. And then they would go right into the coolers. And I had plenty of cooler space to store all the meals. It was like music. I used to call it musical refrigerators, like in with the raw stuff, in with the cooked stuff, out with here, and like moving stuff around. And like I would cool stuff really quickly in the freezers. Oh my God. It was a little juggle, but I got it all done. Yep.
So as this is happening, like sometimes I think you realize you're onto something. And sometimes I think it's like, oh man, like this is when I started to realize that it probably could be a business. So what was like the moment where you're like, all right, this is legitimately going to become, like my business?
Mm-hmm. So I never really actually had that thought. I think because I was crushed losing my last one. And I literally, my husband tells me he is, Jillian, your biggest gift is you keep it stupid simple. He's like, oh, man, you are so good at that. And it's probably just because I'm just like, that's just my personality. I don't get caught in the weeds and the details, probably because I'm not good at them. But so I don't think about a business. I just thought about my passion and helping people eat better and how much I love to cook. So like that was always my focus, is keep the food good and give the best service and help a lot of people. It was my husband who was like, Jillian, this is taking over our home. Like you legitimately have like a business. I think at the peak before we actually opened the store, I was doing almost $250,000, like just on my own, managing everything. It was insane. We were at my parents' house for Thanksgiving. I think it was 2012, no, 2011. Maybe, or one of those years. And he goes, I heard about this business that's based out of Florida. They have a meal prep company and they have stores all over Houston and they sell like 30,000 meals a day. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, we should go check that out. And when I realized there was a company that was doing this with stores, I was like, if we could do just a small percentage of that, like we could be successful. So that was really okay, let's do a business. That was it. When I realized somebody else was doing it, I'm like, we can totally do this then. So that was the turning point for me. And then actually writing the business plan and deciding, okay, how are we going to do this? Because all my clients were used to working with a personal chef. I would email you the menu, you would write back to me, and I would deliver it to your home, white glove service, put it in, you give me the garage code, I would come in your house, put it in your fridge, and take your dog out while I was there. Yeah, no, seriously. And I didn't
throw
even
your
know
laundry in the dryer. I got you.
Yeah, like it was Jillian, the personal chef. Like I just had so many clients. I didn't know half of them. I'd never met them. They were referred from another doctor who worked in the office with the nurse, who then referred me to a patient, who then the patient worked at a dentist's office and referred me to the dentist. And it just kept going. Yeah. And I was delivering food everywhere. So it was 2000 and beginning of end of 2012, we decided we're moving out of our house. We rented a kitchen for about almost a year. Yeah. And we really scaled the thing when we were in the rental kitchen, because there was like a walk-in fridge and there was like actual commercial like equipment to use. So that's when we wrote the business plan and decided we were going to open our first brick and mortar.
I love it. So two things. One is a story that I think we can relate on. So when I was a kid growing up, I had to deliver newspapers, and you talked about how you didn't have an automated payment system. So you would go collect money. And if they happened to forget to leave it in the mailbox or for not have it at that day, you'd be like, well, it's an IOU. We'll grab it next time. Yeah. And I just remember being a kid and going around and you deliver the newspaper, and then I always told them, hey, on the first Tuesday of the month, I'm going to swing back by and I'm going to pick up your monthly payment, because I have to pay for these first and then you pay me after. And the amount of times that people are just like, oh, we don't have it right now. It's like, well, all right, I'll be back.
You did your paper route.
How old was I? So I started in fourth grade. So I don't know. How old are you when you're in fourth grade? Like 10? I don't know.
Yeah. That's my husband. He did a paper route too. He tells me the stories and I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like he's like, yeah, when it was raining, you had to stick the paper inside those plastic things. So you have to get up extra 25 minutes early just to stick them all, roll them up. And I'm like, oh my God. So he said he got up, I think it was like 5:30 or something before school.
Oh, we'd have people call our house, my parents' house, if the newspapers weren't there by 6. So it was like, yeah. And granted, it's worked out well for me. I love getting up early, but there's no doubt that was the basis of why I still get up early today.
Oh, wow. I think it is instilled a lot of work ethic and just discipline in you in such a young age. You don't even realize how much that served you. Right. I can how much it served my husband for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's great. But the second thing that I thought was very interesting in your story is how humble you were willing to be in regards to when you found out that business was operating down in Texas. You're like, well, opposed to me just trying to figure it out, why don't I go down there and check out the things? So the two of you head on down and take a peruse through and get to learn a lot about it.
I just had to see it. I was like, this is crazy, because like I was just doing what I love, but someone had made a business out of it. So I think it just gave me the confidence that I could do another business. And, my husband was like, Jillian, this business is going to be yours. Like, you're going to be making decisions. You're more mature now. Like, we're going to do this together. Like, I'll be here if you have questions. Like, it wasn't like in my previous business, I was only part owner and I was minority owner. Like I only had 30%. So it was a still big percent. I mean, I still worked 65 hours a week. I was there all the time, but I wasn't calling the final shots. And I think that was where a lot of the disconnect happened. And I was going to be fully responsible for this second ship.
I love it. So as you enter into the first, brick and mortar store, the business does change a little bit, right? Opposed to you driving around, people are now coming to you and picking up, correct?
Yeah. So this is crazy. So if you wanted to be a client of mine, when I was a personal chef, you had to order 10 meals. I just wasn't going to drive to you for 3 or 4 meals. It just wasn't worth my time. I already had 120 deliveries we had to make. So for $40 was not worth it. You had to be, spending $100. Yeah. So, what I did was, I shut down my ordering, and it was just too much, too fast. And not to mention I had a baby, like 2 months after I opened the brick and mortar. So here I was, a new mom, a new business owner, a new concept in St. Louis. And no, I was not doing any ordering. I didn't have the infrastructure built with a website or anything. And I couldn't manually do all that while run a store and produce food, 5 or 6 days a week. So it just kind of switched. And we were lucky enough that we had enough people around the area that was very excited, or some of my clients did drive there. But I stopped taking orders. I did lose quite a bit of people because they were further away, or they were so busy as busy professionals, they didn't have time to drive to where we were to pick up their food.
Right.
So we did our business for a little over a year, well, 1 year, and we were able to open our second location. So it did well. And we just planned the second location. We opened it, I want to say 14, 15 months after we had our first store. Yep.
Now, something that is interesting is every business goes through this, right? Scaling, right? What worked at this level won't work at this level. And you have to increase in all those things. And you kind of talked about, I think it was after the third store, things had been really, really profitable. And then all of a sudden you open this third one, and you're like, crud, this isn't as profitable as it had been when there was two. So I guess talk a little bit about, one, working through that, but then two, also being like the mental game of, did I make a bad choice? Was I only supposed to stay at two, or, was the third one the right choice? Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, man. So there's just like, with being a founder of something, like if you have a franchise, it's great because you got a blueprint. I mean, you have a lot of responsibility, but like, you don't have to figure everything out on your own. We had to figure everything out on our own. And with being like the only one in St. Louis, there was nobody else really doing it. So there was no one to compare yourself to, unless you were looking up people on how their business operated from a local level. And when we had two locations, we had our production facility and everybody worked there. And then we would just have 1 or 2 people working at that other store. But when we opened our third location, we needed to expand our production facility. So then we bought the bay, or released the bay right next to us. So we moved half of our production next door. That created, believe it or not, a huge, it was complicated communication. Let me just say, because this side was doing one thing, and we weren't all working in the same area anymore. So to get the flow to become functional took us about 6 to 8 months. I mean, maybe even a year. Like, it just was challenging. And not to mention that I couldn't put my focus there because I was launching our new concept at the smoothie bar, which was, hey, let's have a smoothie bar when we open our third store. Yeah, easy. No, not, because I mean, you had to have fresh product there, and it had to turn over, and it had to be, we got checked by the health department. It wasn't just like another store selling meals. No, it had smoothies that were there. So we had to have an extra employee. I went from having 20 people to having 45 people within less than 30 days. So we increased our production team because we needed to cook more food. We moved half the team, in cooking and packaging on one side. So it was just like no processes for that, more people, no training, new concept at the smoothie bar, no training. Oh yeah, I just had a second baby, wasn't sleeping, had 2 infants. I had a 1-year-old and a 9-year-old. And like, it was a lot. And then I had all these employees and no processes, no handbook, nothing. And we were overstaffing. We weren't purchasing food cost smart. We were just buying food. We weren't pricing stuff properly. It was just no processes or training in place. So those 3 things right there, I mean, will just swallow you alive as a human. On top of trying to have a baby and be a mother. And I was running the ship, and I had, 2 infants basically. And it was a hard time for me. And I had a mental breakdown. I collapsed, and I seek professional help, which got me back up out of the grave. Like, I had a sleep therapist help me with my kids. I hired a personal assistant to help me just manage the day-to-day shit. And then I joined like an entrepreneur organization to just get me support from people who were doing bigger things. Like my friends, I couldn't talk to them about this kind of stuff. I needed support. I needed guidance. So those three things really did help me. And it took me about a year to kind of come up out of it. But when I did, my business just started to go down. And we didn't have the sales. We weren't recycling customers. Like they weren't coming back.
Right.
Like either had a bad experience or they weren't followed up with, or they weren't educated. We weren't nurturing people. So they would just come in like the top of the funnel and they'd fall out the bottom, where now we try to keep it like a flywheel. They just keep going around. So it's like, hey, you come in, then you eat the food, you have a great experience. We follow up, we invite you back in, and it just keeps going. And we're part of your lifestyle. We didn't know any of our messaging then. So we had none of our marketing strategy in place. We didn't even have marketing then. Like we were throwing ads in magazines and hoping that would work. Like we didn't know what we were doing. So my leadership team spent the next 3 years trying to figure out how the fuck to run a business. Really, we got into food contracts to get better contract pricing. We figured out our labor and that we were overstaffing in certain areas. And then we really honed in on our training and our processes and clarifying how to run the business. And that takes time. Like, it takes time to create those things and then to implement them and then have success with them. And then on top of that, like you have this culture in your company that you're trying to breed, and it is a live thing. Anybody who runs a company understands culture. And if it's not a good culture, I mean, it starts with you, and you have to be there, and you have to have good team players that are going to implement the culture all the way down through the company. And so that was something that we were trying to cultivate as well as we grew. And then, it wasn't just until 2019 when we really started to see things come to fruition. We had labor under control. We had amazing processes. Our training was better. Our marketing strategy really started to make sense, and our voice was consistent. And we had a lot of different avenues on how we were touching the customer. And when those things started to work, people started to come back and the sales started to go up. And, it really is what kind of saved the business. And then the coronavirus hit.
Yeah.
That's kind of the story.
Yeah. So one thing I want you to talk a little bit about is, there's something to be said about having a plan, right? There is something to be said about that, but there's probably more to be said about just being willing to start, right? Like, hey, just start it out. You can have the perfect plan, but guess what? I think it was Muhammad Ali, or maybe it was Mike Tyson. One of the great boxers says, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. Right. And that's like, well, now I just got to figure it out, like I had this, jab step and everything, but it's like, now I just got hit. So now I just, I got to react. So talk a little about just being willing to start with things instead of, saying, hey, I've got to have it meticulously laid out before I'll even get going.
Yeah. So it's good to have a plan. Like, I feel like my husband and my partner and, my lead people, we talk about stuff, but like, it's hard to like say, hey, let's write a 5-year plan, because like stuff is changing so fast with our small business. And, we've had to be reactionary, but like, we're always planning for growth and we're always doing what we can, but we have to be reactionary to what's going on around us. And like, when we set our goals this year, we want to keep expanding, but we realized there was something that we needed to focus on internally, like on an employee level, before we could grow, because we knew if we continued to grow before we worked on that small thing, it was just going to exacerbate, and then it would be even harder to fix down the road. So we said, okay, let's pump the brakes. Let's fix this internal thing. Nobody can see it from the outside. We can feel it from the inside. I know it's a ticking time bomb. So like, let's address I don't want to do this, fix it. And then we can move forward, because we're going to have our ducks in order. And like, those are the things that I feel so good about, because I'm like, I know these are the right decisions. And so, when we do plan, I mean, we plan for the year, we set our goals or whatnot. And like, we didn't do that at the beginning. Like, I didn't have goal meetings and leadership team meetings, and we didn't do those things. Like, those are things that we've just started recently doing as we've came up for air and realized, okay, our food is good, it's consistent. And now we have training in place. People can work the stores. Okay, now let's plan at a bigger level. Like, I think it's hard to do those things when you're starting, because you're just, like I always said, I'm just trying to cook food and keep it on the shelves. Like, and not kill anybody, you know?
Yeah.
You want to make sure, like for us, everything is about our product. Our
Mhm.
product is everything to us. So like at the end of the day, I don't care how beautiful our food photography is or how good our customer service is. If the food sucks, they're not coming back. So
Yep.
the food quality is number one for us. That is like the engine of the business. So, and luckily it's always been my focus. It's always been my executive chef's focus. Like it's important. Like we have this internal channel for work for every employee to comment on. It's like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Slack. It's like,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, text. So we have a channel that's called customer feedback, and literally any complaint we get on food goes on that channel. So I get to see it. I get to hear every complaint. So if there's any consistency or any outliers or something weird, I can call a customer. I can have a meeting with my chefs about an issue. We've been able to address things as they come. So it's not like they come into the associate and then they never make them to me. They come directly to me, and it's something I address weekly. And
Yeah.
I feel like as long as I can stay grounded on that feedback that we're receiving, that's all I need. That is direct feedback on the product. Like, why wouldn't I listen to that? So that really guides everything we do. But once we got the food in order, then we can really start planning, and we've been able to increase our training and just increase the planning as
Yeah.
well, you know?
Yep.
So
That's so good. And so important to, have systems processes inside the business. Cause otherwise, it gets going way too fast and then you get out of whack.
and another thing too I've
Yeah.
learned is like I mean, I've got a lot of really great managers, but like if I'm honest, some of them are good at some things and some of them are good at other things. And when I have a manager that can create a process and implement it and train people, like that is a gift. And that is special because not everybody can do that. It takes organization, a lot of details, a lot of leadership. And so what we've done is we've tried to take those people to help in other areas of the business to create more processes for the company.
That's awesome. And obviously instilling confidence in them as well, right? Hey, you're valuing what I'm adding to the business, which huge for many reasons, employee retention. Yeah. All that. So go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm going to say one more thing
No, yeah.
too. And when I started off, like I always grew, then hired. And I guess you could say like, I just couldn't afford to pay people what I wanted to have an employee work for. Like we just didn't have the means to do those things. And we didn't have the margins that we have now when we started off, like, because we weren't food costing properly. We were overspending on labor. Like there were so many things we were doing wrong. And as we learn to correct those things, it opens up more margin for us where now we can hire to grow. And that's an opportunity now that we have that I didn't have when I first started. So I think sometimes people try to hire too soon and then it doesn't necessarily work. And sometimes you just have to do more jobs.
Yeah.
I still am customer service for Fit Flavors. We're a multi-million-dollar company, and I'm on call before 8, after 4, and every day on the weekend. And I have been since we started customer service phone lines. I mean, until I can pay someone, I'm like, why wouldn't I do it? And plus I have direct contact with my customer and I love that. Everybody's like, oh, Jillian, we feel so bad. We should take that off to you. I'm like, it's one of my favorite things I get to do is answer the phone. But like I'll do it until we can warrant having someone, you know what I mean?
Yes. I love it. Earlier, you beat me to the punch. I had asked you a question to set you up for this moment, but you beat me to the punch. And that was when I asked you about how the heck did you juggle all these different things you had going on? You go, well, gosh, I wasn't even busy then. Now I'm busy. Yeah. I mean, now we had, in that time frame, you had 2 kiddos open, 3 stores in 3 years. So, I mean, kind of busy.
45 employees.
But talking about that, so something that I've always done as a visual is, people's capacity to do things is kind of like going to a buffet, right? There's the little salad plates, and those are good enough to fit a certain amount of food on. Then they've got kind of like the intermediary where you might put, a couple of things on there and a couple other things. Then they got the really big one, and then they've got the really small dessert plates. And everyone's just at a different capacity, right? What you can handle, at that time might have been a salad plate for you, but now you're into the bigger one. And in 5 years, when we do this again, and you've got 25 stores, you're going to be at the really big one, but it's always a constant growth of your capacity. And so talk a little bit about how that's morphed for you over time.
Yeah, I think you have to want to grow, and you have to be okay being uncomfortable. Like if
Yeah.
you're just scared to be uncomfortable and you want to have balance all the time, like I don't think you're going to grow. I
Yeah.
mean, other people are going to pass you by. People are willing to do more work and be more uncomfortable and sacrifice. Like I think about all the things that I sacrificed with my time.
Yeah.
Just even when I started the business, for example, like I was 25 when I started, and I gave up Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to work for 4 years straight, every weekend. And
Right.
a lot of people wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I like when I opened the business and like I started the first brick and mortar, like nobody even saw all that I had done before,
Right.
like those are just like things that you do. And like, I don't need a pat on the back. Like I probably would have never had the business if I wouldn't have done that,
Yeah.
and or even just taking the customer service calls. Like those are things like you got to do. You do. I mean, I'm on vacation sometimes and I'll like keep it on. Like if it's a good vacation, I'll ask my team to help pick it up, and they're very awesome with taking the calls for me. But like
Yeah.
I just do it. It doesn't, and I hate sometimes it doesn't feel like work. It just feels like my life, and it's what I'm trying to create and build. So every part of it is I'm just motivated to do it all. But you
Yeah.
have to have a love for it, because if you don't have a love for it, like then you start resenting the work,
Yep.
and then the passion's not there, and then you're not being fulfilled because the money is not always there. Like
Yeah.
for many years I didn't pay myself. I invested it back into the company for the growth. Obviously that's
Right.
why we grew. Half the reason why we grew so fast is because I just would say, let's not pay me. Like fortunate enough to have a husband who could support me, and we decided to keep the money in the business, open another store. Like don't take a salary, pay for another build out.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't take a salary, pay for health insurance for all the employees. Like those are the decisions that I made early on to build a stable business and then create careers and a career path for people. I could see ahead. Maybe I didn't have it all written down on paper, but I knew that those were the right decisions to make, to invest in the business for years down the road.
Yeah. So thinking about that, are there days where you miss getting to just be the chef?
I still am a
Yeah.
lot. I do all the menu development for Fit Flavors. I lead the menu development team. Just recently did I start having some of the other chefs in the kitchen help craft some of the menu items, merely because I want to create buy-in. Like
Yeah.
come help me be a part of creating this. Like, so we have some people in the kitchen that create some of the dishes. I work hand in hand with our nutrition analyst. We geek out on macros and ingredients. So like every week I'm like, can you source me this? Can you source me this? So I'm actually in the kitchen almost every week creating new recipes for Fit Flavors. And it's like I'm constantly researching in magazines and restaurants that I attend, flavor profiles, and just experience some like different cooking techniques and combinations, and like how can I bring this to Fit Flavors in like a healthy way. So
Yeah.
no, that is what I do. Do I miss cooking? Not per se.
Yeah.
When I started this, it's going to sound funny saying this, but like I never envisioned myself cooking all so much. I always envisioned myself being more nutrition based.
Yeah.
So I do the menu development, and I work with our RD with the nutrition. So like I'm getting to do all the things that I'm super passionate about with Fit Flavors. And I do get to still cook in the kitchen every week. So I still have my hands in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, last question I have for you today. It's something that probably about 4 years ago was an idea that was introduced to me, and just profoundly changed the way that I view different things in life. And the phrase was blissful dissatisfaction.
Mm.
And so the idea or the concept the individual was explaining was, there's a lot of people that when they hit their first goal, they kind of plateau. They say, you know what, hey, I made it, right? I opened my first store. I'm good. Like, this is where I want to stay. Then there's the other type of a person where it's like, well, yeah, I hit that goal, but now what's next, right? And so you never really take time to enjoy hitting a goal because you're constantly on to the next thing. And it's such a hard balancing act, right? Accomplishing things and feeling satisfaction, but yet not losing the drive for more. So for you in your life, how have you balanced that? Because you've accomplished so much, you're doing so many great things, yet I know there's still more to come from you.
how do I balance that? I think, you got to be happy. Like I've definitely not been happy in points of this business. Like during those 3 years where my business struggled, that was the hardest time for me. I mean, that was
Yeah.
harder than when having the anxiety, maybe because like you said, as you grow, you can take more on that dinner plate, or you're taking multiple dinner plates. I had more dinner plates then than when I had lost the business and hadn't started one. So that
Yeah.
it felt so much worse. And I went through such a dark time for so long that it just beat me down. But coming out of that, I'm so much stronger, and keeping the business afloat through that time. Like, I mean, I look at what I had to do just to make payroll with
Yeah.
cash, like what we did to keep this business alive, and what it did for my faith.
Mm.
Having faith and hope that it would, and trusting God that he would not take me this far to let it all just unfold to nothing. There was so many times I wanted to give up. Like literally, I wanted to sell the business. I thought I hate this business, and like there were those voices in my
Yeah.
head. And I just honestly started talking about this and sharing this with people, because for the longest time I felt like ashamed to
Mm.
say I wanted to sell the business at one point, and that I hated it, and I hated what it did to me, and it was causing me misery. And
Yeah.
that's just truth. That's just
Yeah.
truth. Business it's not for the faint of heart. Um,
No.
but coming out on the other side, like probably for the first year after we came out of that, I felt like I didn't deserve the success. Like it was like, oh my God, this
Mm.
isn't real. This can't be real. Like, because I had felt so bad for so long that when I started to accept it and embrace it, I thought, oh my God, I have got to enjoy this and enjoy this. All this fruit that I've been like sowing these seeds to create is coming to fruition, and seeing it blossom this last year through this whole pandemic, and how many people's lives it's affecting because it's a convenient product that's serving them and their family and their health is just, it's so rewarding to see it come to fruition like that. But in 20 this year, it was really last year, the summer of last year and to the beginning of this year, like I decided to take a step back and write a book. I didn't step back by working less, but like I don't have to physically drive deliveries anymore. I'm not filling in for managers anymore. I'm
Right.
not working my store anymore. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to create and write this book that's been on my mind for a while. So I'm finishing up editing a book right now. I'm hoping it'll come out January of 2022. Yeah, it's all about owning the weight. So a lot of what we talked about,
Yeah.
owning the weight in business, but more so to owning the weight in your nutrition journey. I think a lot of people want the now. So I talk a little bit about my story in business. We go in depth, and then I'll talk about my nutrition journey and how
Yeah.
when you own the weight, there are steps that you need to take in the process to really get to success. So just really, I think my kids too have also had made me be present more in the moment and enjoy what is going on. But like even with this book, sometimes it feels like homework, and I
Yeah.
don't like school. Remember, I dropped out.
Yeah.
But like I'm like, oh my God, I'm writing a book. Like I'm in the process of writing a book. I'm working with the editor. Like enjoy this. So like
Yeah.
every time when I sit down to go look at the book with a bunch of red, because he's edited so much, like I just smile because I'm like, I'm writing a book, and try to enjoy
Yeah.
the process of getting there in the moment, because once I'm there, it'll be over and I'll be like, I spent the last year writing it and I didn't even enjoy it. It felt like a drag. Like I don't have that mindset at all.
Yeah.
And just like getting the opportunity to go in my kitchen and create new flavors for the business. Like I enjoy my Wednesdays. It's like my creative day. So I'm also trying to take a little bit of personal time for myself right now. I felt like in the last, probably 6 to 8 months, I sacrificed a lot more of my personal time trying to get my podcast launched, my book
Mhm.
launched, started launching a weekly newsletter, putting a lot of content out. And it was like the balancing act of how do I manage that and run a company. It felt like I felt guilty. I was like taking time away from Fit Flavors, but really it's adding more value back in. So
Yeah.
I am enjoying life right now. I am enjoying everything. Everything's going great with the business. So I call this an ebb and a flow. This is definitely one of the good flows. So I'm embracing it, enjoying it. I am prepared for whatever comes our way. I know there's going to be other seasons of life that I have to go through with this business, but my faith is strong. I have a lot of confidence in our team and where we can go. So I'm ready for it. So I am enjoying myself right now.
I love it. I love it. Well, Jillian, thank you so much for being on today, sharing your story, a whole bunch of good nuggets. We'll include everything with where we can find you in the notes. But thank you again so much. And like I said, we'll have to do this again in a couple of years, and we'll see where the story's
Yep.
taking us then.
Awesome. Thank you so much.